say something.
Okay. Testing 1, 2. Testing 1, 2, 3. No.
All right. This morning that we had invited Miss Crystal over to have lunch with us and to discuss with you the importance of reenacting the compulsory school attendance law. And as I told you this morning, Miss Crystal is the legislative chairman for the Mississippians for Public Education. Her and this group have done much to preserve public education in the state of Mississippi. I'm sure all of you are acquainted with this. Had it not been for the organization, I think that we might have had some real problems here in the last year or two with a certain group trying to destroy the public education system. I'm sure that all of you recognize the fact that we in the labor movement have about as much at stake in preserving public education in Mississippi as any other group. Because the average working person certainly can't send their children, afford to send their children to a private school if they have to pick up the full cost. Miss Crystal has advised me that she would rather handle this thing kind of on an informal basis, which of course is all right with us, and that she will probably have a few words to say and want to have some questions directed at her and handle it in this fashion. So with those three remarks, it gives me a great deal of pleasure to present to you Miss Elaine Crystal from Jackson. Miss Crystal.
Thank you.
The whole discussion. But the first thing that I want to make a determination of here is whether or not the board wants to go on record in support of the school attendance law that Ms. Crystal has been discussing here.
I'll make a motion to that effect.
I'll second it. We have a motion and a second that the Executive Board of the Labor Council supports the school attendance law that will be introduced by Senator Purvis and others shortly. We have any discussion on that motion?
Mr. Chairman, I would like to add an amendment to the motion, but before I do, I'd like to preface it by making a remark or two in regard to a bill that has been introduced or will be introduced by my senator from Monroe County, Al Foster. And that has to do with this non-resident attendance situation. Tuition. And in his letter to the people in this week's paper, it was pointed out by Senator Foster that in my county alone, 200 people, 200 children, are being deprived of attendance at public school.
Yes, 7,000 throughout the state.
So the amendment would be that we also endorse that type of a bill.
And we support the bill that will be introduced by Senator Foster.
Right.
Which will actually be a bill to repeal the legislation enacted at the last session concerning this question. Right. We have any discussion? Do we have a second to that amendment?
I'll second his amendment.
You've heard the amendment to the original motion. Do we have any further discussion on the motion?
You might wish to consider the bill for attendance that was passed at the last regular session. And this was for tuition payments to children attending private schools. This is something.
Well, I don't know if that's going to be going into this time or not. Might be a good idea to consider this separate.
Well, this was also before the three-judge panel
Yeah, well, I think that the court's gonna probably strike the whole works down. This question that Marvin raised is, in the courts, and of course the other one is also. We have any other discussion on this? We go out of the way, we're gonna discuss another school item. That's the reason I asked Brother Stanley again. We'd like to ask you to stay to hear this discussion also, if you'd like to. But let me dispose of this motion. Do we have any further discussion on the motion? Not all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carried and so ordered.
I'd like to make it. Can I
Now,
comment on this clause?
wait just a minute. Now that you have gone on record to support the legislation, I want to find out if you want me and Brother Knight, you want to give us the authority to work with these people in a way that we can.
Yeah.
There's a possibility that they might need a little financial assistance. And I think that we might afford, might well be able to afford, make a contribution of a couple $100 to them when and if that need arises. If it's your wishes, we put that on the record also.
I move, Mr. Chairman, that you and the Secretary be authorized to work with these people in any way that you see fit.
Second.
You heard that motion. We have any discussion on it? Not all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carried and so ordered. Now, we have another matter that will be considered by the legislature pertaining to public education, the school system, what have you. I'm sure that you've been reading about some legislation that will be introduced. Some has been introduced and some will be introduced pertaining to the makeup of the State Board of Education. There's two specific proposals that will be introduced this time. Both of them set up a 9-member State Board of Education. One is sponsored by the Mississippi Economic Council and the other one by the Mississippi Educational Association itself. The difference in the two proposals, and this will be a constitutional amendment, by the way, has to be. The difference in the two proposals centers around how the 9-member board will be selected. The MEC proposal is similar to the one that was defeated once before, whereby the governor appointed a 9-member State Board of Education, and staggered terms, of course, whereby no governor would be able to control the majority of the appointments. Theoretically, this is it. And that this 9-member board then would appoint a state superintendent of education. You're familiar with what we have now. We have a 3-member ex officio board with the state superintendent of education being the prime figure, who is also elected. The other proposition, sponsored by the Educational Association, would set up a 9-member board, 3 members being elected from each Supreme Court district. And that this 9-member board then would appoint the State Board of Education, Superintendent of Education. The difference in the two proposals centers around the selection of the State Board itself. Now, Brother Stanley has already advised you that he attended this meeting in Virginia not long ago that considered a number of educational problems, and that group discussed various types of boards of education. They've had quite a bit of experience throughout this area. I thought it would be good if we invited him to come over and talk with us also and give you the benefit of their experience and what he's learned. Because frankly, I think that we're going to have to, as a matter of necessity, before this legislature is over with, take a position on this vital question as to whether or not, first, do we feel that we need to change the makeup of the State Board of Education, and if we do feel it should be changed, then what proposal of the two, or what proposal other than the two, would you like to support? So at this point, I'm going to call on Brother Stanley and ask him, if he will at this time, to review with you some of the things that he discovered at the meeting. And what was it, Virginia, Bill?
Yeah. Thank you, Claude. I'd like to say this, that the MEA also has got another, they got another little loophole in theirs. The MEA is on these 9-member elected board members have got a requirement that a candidate for this state board have at least 2 years of college. That it means that it has to be a college man that's going to be a candidate and ultimately elected to the board. And
Now that's the qualification of the board members themselves.
yeah, the MEA has got that hanging right now. Now, I'm not sure that they've got their bill drawn, but that's what they're looking at.
Yeah.
And very soundly and with much support from professional educators is that a school board member have at least 2 years college. And then they want to turn loose that school board to hire a state superintendent of education. Now, this group this meeting that I attended, primarily of 400 professional people, well, 400 people, most of all of whom were professional educators, and one from elementary all the way through college. To give you an example of the kind of people there, everybody from Mississippi was a professional educator or associated with the State Board of Education, except a guy named Billy Howard from Laurel, who's the president of the bank, the president of the Mississippi Broadcasters Association from Starkville, the president of the Congress of Parents Teachers Association from Olive Branch, Purser Hewitt from the Clarion Era, and myself. And how I got into that group, I don't know, but anyway, I went. This is the first time such conference as this was ever called. And as I said earlier, it was sponsored by the Southern Association of Colleges and Schools. Now, that's a highfalutin term. That's the organization that accredits all of the schools in the southern region. That's how Columbus, that's the group, Marvin, that ruled that the Columbus High School was not an accredited school. The Macon High School and the Louisville High School and the Moss Point School were all removed from the accredited list. And that's the same group that almost removed the accreditation of the Mississippi Schools of Higher Learning because of the Meredith and the Ross Barnett and the removal of academic freedom fiasco here a few years ago. They did not specifically have on their program a discussion on the election or selection or the makeup of boards of education, as Claude may have implied. But while there, I circulated and tried to talk to as many people from as many states as I possibly could to see what they were doing and how they, what they thought was the best setup. Florida is the only other state in this 11-state region, and I believe is the only state in the nation that has an ex officio board like Mississippi does. The rest of them have a state board. Most all the states, they elect their state board of education on a regional basis. Most all of them. And in most of them, they elect their state superintendent of education rather than the board appointment.
This is southern?
In the southern region. That includes Virginia, all the way through Texas, Arkansas, and West Virginia, which a lot of people don't refer to as in the southern states. No, just West Virginia. Arkansas was not in it, I'm sorry. And the general consensus opinion, talking to high school principals from St. Francisville, Louisiana, to the school superintendent of Memphis, to the president of Sam Houston University in Texas, talking to Dr. Rose, the president of the University of Alabama, and the president of Baylor College, talking to Dr. Fortenberry of Ohio Lincoln, some of these names slip my mind, from Ferguson Junior College, Dr. Todd, school superintendent in Meridian, the school superintendent in Clarksdale, school superintendent in Starkville, those kind of people from other states, and all of them name slipped me at the moment. They believe that to have a sound statewide state educational board, you need to have the elected board members, but also the elected state superintendent of education, which neither one of these proposed bills from MEC and MEA contain. They want to hire the state board, and their reasons for it is that, in fact, as similar to here in Jackson, where the city commission appoints the school board, and they hire Dr. Kirby Walker, that Dr. Kirby Walker, in fact, runs it. And he's removed from the parents, from the electorate, and there's no way you can touch him. And in fact, if you look in your school district, most all of you have got where there is an appointed school board and an appointed state superintendent, school superintendent. And those people are completely removed from being touched by the voters. And then there's some people who say, well, maybe that's right, that we voters don't know what we need in education, and we need professionals. And I took that kind of argument with the people that I was talking to see what they thought, and they still believe that it was dangerous to set that state superintendent of education up, who in fact administers and is, in the experiences they've had with them, are extremely powerful, and that it was just dangerous and it was best to have them elected. And Claude, I could rave on about it, but in essence, from Virginia to Texas, of people I talked to, elect the board. They disagreed with Mississippi and Florida's system of presently having an ex officio board, that the Attorney General and the Secretary of State, when they ran for office, very few people knew that they were running as a member of the state board. They ran for those primary offices, and that's the appeal MEC's going and MEA is going to put to the voters.
Yeah, but MEC's proposal is one of the members appointed by the governor.
That's right, but they want to do away with the ex officio board.
Yeah.
That they.
Well, this is what I want to find out here. What was the opinion of this group about the need for a larger board, such a board?
Well, they believe that the board, and most all of them have 9 or to a larger board, that the board ought to be basically elected rather than appointed.
But there is a need for a larger board, broadly based board, right?
I didn't ask that specific question, but I gathered from the way they answered, yes, they agreed with it, that there is from a cross section of the state.
Yeah. Of course, the question that we first need to resolve here is whether we feel that there's a need to enlarge the State Board of Education. And if we do, then how's the best way to go about selecting that state board?
Well,
we can do this in steps, you see.
Enlarge or not, and this is just my opinion, for whatever it's worth, it's probably not worth very much. I'm convinced that whether we think it ought to be enlarged or not, that these two important pressure groups, MEA and MEC,
right,
who are going to carry the emotional appeal, and people don't vote reason, they vote emotion. They're going to carry the emotional appeal that really we've only got a one-man state board of education in Mississippi, and that needs to be enlarged.
Well, it's true.
And to take it out of Jack Tubbs' hands. I think some of the people who will be supporting that are those who would like to burn books, and the Daughters of American Revolution who want to take the books out of the elementary schools that shows a black rabbit alongside a white rabbit, and those kind of things, and they want to remove, and there are those who want to remove from the textbooks anything about the dignity of man. It's all the dignity of property and dignity of industry and the rights of human beings. That gets to me thought control and controlling of what's being taught to people. They'll first take off on the teaching of communism. You got the elements, and North Carolina's having a real battle right now about who can speak on the campuses. And
well, we'll have that one before this session.
Well, that's controlled by the textbook purchasing committee.
Yeah, we've had groups who want to control that. And,
definitely.
And if they can get into these school superintendents and school boards, I'm not saying, there's just a possibility that they could get to them and get their support. If all of those people, in particular the state superintendent, is removed from touch by the voters, the school book purchasing board, or whatever it is, textbook purchasing board or approval board, could have tremendous influence exercised on them by the state superintendent of education. Jack Tubbs, thank God, fought this thought control and book control.
Well, of course,
And I think that was one of our assets.
Right.
And I think that demonstrated the power of a state superintendent of education right there.
Well, you know-
He was not successful and he was, excuse me, is
No,
it
go
all right
ahead,
if
go
I
ahead,
speak?
right ahead.
On this matter of electing a state superintendent over appointment of him, I think the disadvantage to election is that the state superintendent is controlled by what the voters, by what his actions will mean to the voters. In other words, he's restricted by that. Whereas if he were appointed and didn't have to go up for election every 4 years by the people at large, there were many things that he could have done. He almost lost an election because he was too liberal. And he's been scared ever since, even though he's tried to do the best job that he can. But by putting it in the hands of the electors, it becomes a strictly political job, and it restricts.
I don't mean to say in our way, but if this state board appoints a irresponsible, inefficient administrator of the elementary and secondary schools, and that's all in Mississippi, the state superintendent of education is over, not over the schools of higher learning, that and he's removed from the voters to get to him, and they're complacent and ineffective in getting to the state board, then he's there for a long time, just like the board here in Jackson. And you know how much trouble some people have had with this board, which is removed from the voters, and they'll thumb their nose at the voters.
Well, that's because both the board and the superintendent are removed from the voters.
Well, I don't know that it's, Claude asked me to get what I found, and I found this from those people that they favored the electing of the superintendent.
Did you?
Even I found superintendents who were appointed that favored being elected, that office being elected. Not state superintendent of education, but I found school boards, the Memphis School Board, superintendent of schools, favored being elected. Now, I don't know whether it's, of the two bills that's proposed in my judgment, and I should be throwing out my judgment as I have, that the MEA, except I have some question mark about the 2-year requirements for college for a man to be a candidate for the state school board, that is more compatible with what I think would be in the best interest of the citizens of Mississippi and the school and the students of Mississippi. In education, we got to think who's most important, and that's the child. And I think we got to get away from this thing. You know, I don't think this should be, the fact that a child is born in the South should be a handicap. And we've got that right now because of our educational setup. And there's going to be some revolutionary changes made in education. And I think that the electorate needs to be considering that in whatever they do. I'm convinced it's going to be a change. The MEA proposal is more compatible with what, if we want to take one of the two, Claude, summarize.
We don't have to take one of the two. We can.
It's more compatible with what professional educators I've talked to at this conference think is appropriate. The only exception they make is they believe that the superintendent ought to be elected. They also believe that the 2-year college requirement ought to be on there.
Well, if you recall, we came to grips with this thing during Ross Barnett's administration. And we opposed the MEC proposal at that time because we didn't want to run the risk of having Ross Barnett appoint the state superintendent of education. We felt at that time that that the Women for Constitutional Government and these other radical right-wing groups would actually gain control of the State Board of Education, and that they would really damage the school system. This was one of the big reasons that we opposed that proposition back, when was it, in '60? I think it was 1960. But the situation has changed somewhat now. There's no question but what both of these proposals will be made, and since it's part of my duties to represent our interests in the legislature, I wanted to find out what this board wanted to do, what position, if any, they wanted to take, because this is another real vital issue at hand. See?
Thoughts along that line, cause frankly, I'm opposed to any appointments in fact removing the positions from the electorate. That's my personal feeling.
I think the position of, do you think the board members should also be elected, that they should be elected, and that the
Yes, sir.
state superintendent should also be elected?
Yes, sir. We've got too many political machines in the state already control the state's we're in the mess we're in right now.
Anybody else like to express themselves on that?
I would like to make this comment. I understand, and you know this better than I am, that there is thought in the legislature of doing away with the Committee on Institutions of Higher Learning. That's Dr. Joe outfit, and making the appropriations direct to the institutions of higher learning rather than making them to this committee on institutions of higher learning. I doubt if this will come about in this legislature, but a lot of people and a lot of our voters think that the state superintendent, Jack Tubb, is the superintendent over the institutions of higher learning, and that's not so. There is a special committee, and any appropriations from the legislature in the educational field is only for elementary and secondary schools through one group, and to institutions of higher learning through another group.
Mr. Chairman, if I might, I would like to read Brother Robbins' partial there, in that the state superintendent of education should by all means remain an elective office. At the same time, I'm inclined to think that it might be more advantageous for this board, 9-member board, to be appointed by the governor, provided these terms are strictly staggered, so that no stinking governor, and I'll repeat stinking, such as we have had, could get control of the Board of Education. Now, this is as far as I'd want to go there, but actually the principle of election here is what I think we ought to stick to. That would be the only appointed phase of the thing that I would personally be in favor of, in that fashion, that no governor could stack it.
Well, that
Well,
would be
we're
in
placed in this position, in my opinion, on that, Tom, where we at right now, where your Workmen's Compensation Commission. You see what happened to that by appointment.
Yeah.
You know,
This is the type of thing you have to think about, you see.
Mr. Chairman, I agree with Brother Robbins on that score. I think that both the board and the superintendent of education should be elected. I believe in getting away from that appointment business as much as possible.
May I ask a question right here? We're running a little bit late on proposing. What I'm talking about, these two bills, the way I understand it, have already been drawn, right?
No, not yet. They will be. I don't think that.
Are there a possibility of exerting enough influence to get them rewritten in this?
Well,
fashion?
this can be done in committee. All
Well,
this
that's-
can be done
that's
in
what I'm
committee.
talking
Any
about.
of these bills can be rewritten and amended in committee. It don't mean that you just got to support that and let it go at that, one of the two proposals. Either one of them can be amended in committee. You know?
Well, what I'm talking about, Claude, is what is our influence along these lines? We sit here discussing what we would like to see, and of course, people all over the state are discussing what they would like to see. And if we were to take a stand, one way or the other, we're gonna have to consider our position in influencing this thing.
That's right.
It-
That's the
to
reason
be
we-
written this way. And even then, you might be considering, if you can't influence it that, well, taking a stand on the present, thing that you.
Well, the last
just-
time around, if you remember, when we opposed the change, we found ourselves in alignment with some other groups in the state. The MEA especially opposed that change the last time around, and I think probably that they recognize the need and that there will possibly be something done on changing the State Board of Education. And frankly, there is justification to set up a larger board of laymen and what have you to deal with this thing, because you've got 3 elected officials serving on the board, and only one of them puts in full time on this question of education. The thing they see here's the situation. Again, it'll take a constitutional amendment. First, I want to know what form you want that amendment in, if any. Then, if we don't get what we think is fairly decent, then we'll have to make a decision later on as to whether or not to oppose or support the constitutional amendment. Just getting it through the legislature is not going to be the end of it. It's going to be put to the people anyhow, either one of them. So.
Well, actually, Claude, since neither one of these bills apparently have been written, and none of us here.
Well, I'm sure they're
did.
written, but they're in the making.
Yeah.
There's no question about this.
I doubt if it's possible to predict whatever section of the bill will finally be when it reaches the legislature.
Yeah.
I would think that each one of us needs to give it quite a bit of thought, and when we know what the bills really are going to contain when they go to the floor, then we'd probably need to discuss it at that time. Then you know what you got left. I mean, they may also meet several times again and completely change the way now we think they might be written by the time they hit the hopper of the.
Well, would you like
House
to
Representative.
refer this matter to the executive committee for consideration when the appropriate time comes? This might be the best way to handle it, since you're really not in a position maybe to.
I don't see how we could make a concrete proposal because we don't know what the circumstances will be.
I move that we refer it to
Let
the
it be referred to the
executive.
executive committee. We have any discussion on that motion? We do have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Not all in favor of the motion signify it by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carried and so ordered. Well, we appreciate both of the visitors coming out and spending some time with us here today. Especially the young lady who left some of her special propaganda for me to pass out.
This is a little,
Pass this
and
around and keep one as you pass it around.
we hope to get out a lot more, and that's when we're going to call on you.
Yeah.
And we appreciate it.
Oh, yeah. Well, hey, you did, Bill. You give us some food for thought. On this question of things before the legislature, I think probably it would be a good idea for me to bring up some more legislative items that will be considered by the session to find out if you want to take a position on any of those. You've already acted on 2 that I have down, and I'm going to run over briefly with you some others that I think probably that you need to give some consideration with, and then I'll call them off, and then we'll come back and discuss them. And if you have any other items in mind that you also think ought to feel that should be brought up here this afternoon, then don't hesitate to get them on the agenda. Number 1 is the question of splitting the office of sheriff and tax collector and so forth. Another one is the financing of highways. Another one is the legislation that's about to expire on the Milk Commission, and I want Bob in here when we go into this one. Unemployment insurance, and the county unit system is being proposed where, you know, the Board of Supervisors will set up one central location for equipment and all this and take it out of the hands of individual supervisors. And the other one is the legislation recently enacted on where the legislators voted themselves an expense allowance. Let's go back first to now this is the ones I have down. If you have any other items that you think ought to be discussed, then I'll depend on you to bring that up. Number one, the sheriff and tax collector proposition, and in the event you're not too familiar with that, I'll advise you what the situation is. In the last session, I believe it was, or recently, in one of the recent sessions, the Constitution was amended whereby the legislature could separate the office of sheriff and tax collector by legislative action and make it possible for a sheriff to succeed himself. Now, at this particular time, the Sheriff's Association has let it be known that they want a constitutional amendment pushed through this time that would make it possible for them to succeed themselves without dividing the two offices. See? Now, the question that I want considered here is whether or not you want to take a position on this thing, and if you do, what position should we take? I can visualize this thing is loaded like a pair of loaded dice, with the sheriff being allowed to succeed himself as it stands right now, as most of you well know. And frankly, if we're going to take a position, I feel that it should be one to separate the two offices, wherein allow the sheriff to run for re-election and set the thing on a salary basis.
I agree.
I have studied the MEC proposal.
I don't think you'll get it through, but I agree with you.
Well, this is one time that we'll find ourselves in alignment with the MEC if we take this position. And there will be a proposal introduced to separate the two offices and set the salaries, both offices upon a salary basis, and the salary schedule will depend on the size and population of the county. I went over their proposal, the salary schedules and everything, and it's a pretty darn good schedule.
I agree with that.
You see? Now, first, let's make a decision on the proposition of separating the office of sheriff and tax collector. Do you feel that this should be done?
Oh, Claude, as I view the thing personally, the people in the referendum have spoken.
Right.
Now the Sheriff's Association comes along and says we want to change the
Right.
rules. Now,
It takes
who's
another
gonna-
constitutional amendment
They come
there.
there to support that position.
Right.
I'll say baloney.
Right.
Martin, I agree with you.
Yeah. Well, do you think that the Labor Council should take a position on this important subject?
I don't see nothing to lose.
I think it vitally affects us, and I wouldn't want to perpetuate a situation in this state where a sheriff couldn't only become a millionaire, but probably a billionaire or a trillionaire, and you'd never get him out. If he got in there and had access to all of this, then after about 10 years, he'd just be there till he died. He'd be like Bill Chalmers holding the congressional seat. And I'm opposed to this.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the council, board go on record as supporting the separation of the sheriff and tax collector.
And that to be set on a salary basis?
Well, yes, they be set on a salary basis.
You heard that motion, we get a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carried and so ordered. We will now find ourselves in bed with the Mississippi Economic Council.
Well, maybe it'd be good for their souls.
Maybe good for their souls. All right, now the question of highway
They may
finance.
change their mind now.
Let's take up this matter of highway financing. The reason I've got this on the agenda is because there will be something done in this session of the legislature. There has to be done about rebuilding the state's highways, and the the big question is gonna center around where the money's coming from. Now, the proposal that the Highway Committee and the Senate's gonna introduce will place the burden of taxation on the backs of the truckers where it rightly should be, the people that's broke up these highways.
Right.
And I think that the
don't think you
logical
should do that.
position for us to take is to support the measure that's gonna be introduced by Senator Anderson in putting this couple of cents on diesel fuel, and I think it's one on oil or something like this, which would place the burden of the thing where it ought to be.
We'll be, in opposition with the Teamsters Union when we do that.
Well,
Yeah.
well, it's gonna, if it's not this, it's gonna be a couple of cents on gasoline. Now, it's gonna be one of the two.
I didn't say that I disagreed with it, I just,
Yeah.
merely stated we'd be in opposition.
Well, we're gonna be in opposition to Harvey West.
Yeah, that's the point I was fixing to make, with the setup between Johnson and West. To
Yeah.
get it through this legislature, I think they'd have to be removed from the state and kept out of the state till the vote was over, but
Well, do
I'd
we-
be in favor of it.
Somebody wants to offer a motion on that one?
As supporting the bill
Yeah.
as come out by the committee.
Yeah, as
Study committee.
reportedly,
Yeah.
that will be introduced on financing by Senator Anderson.
I would, make a motion to that effect.
We got a second on
second
the
it.
motion. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carried and so ordered. Now, here's a situation on unemployment insurance. I had thought that this might be the session that would afford us a good opportunity to remove the $30 maximum off. But I think that in view of the fact that the Congress of the United States at this session is going to take up this question again, which they're going to put in additional federal standards, which I believe in itself will
Correct.
bring this maximum of $30 up. I don't see that there's any need of us getting in an unnecessary fight at this particular time and wait and see what happens in the Congress. Is this?
Stay out of all of them we can.
Now, of course, if the MEC and other groups start something on this thing, then we'll just have to take them on.
Well, if they started getting a bill to change it, you make even worse to collect it or something, sure, like you did a few years back on them.
Is that agreeable? You know how to vote on this, but if you're agreeable with this, we won't get into that fight this time unless they start one. Okay. How about the county unit system? Do you want to get involved in this one?
Mr. Chairman, I think it'd be unnecessary for us to get in that.
Unwise to stay out of this
It would
one?
be.
I wanted to bring it up though to see if there's any feeling here that we should. Of course, you're gonna be bucking the boards of supervisors and they are pretty strong politically. Might as well go ahead and let the board of supervisors clobber the MEC, huh?
I think we'll
I think
let
the
that
thing has
alone.
merit, however.
There is some
I do
merit.
too.
Trina,
Well, I
I brought
think
it up.
there's
There's
merit.
certainly some merit behind the proposal.
I think there's
That way
merit
you
in it.
established in each county a place for the equipment, you could be sure that the thing wasn't getting out of hand and some guy in one beat wasn't getting no telling what kind of a kickback, but.
If they're gonna steal it, they'd all have to.
They'd all have to be in on it.
Separated out behind that.
There's no question what there's some merit behind the proposal. There's great merit behind it. No ifs and ands about it. But there is such a thing of getting involved in too many fights. There's no question about that, Steve.
I sat on the grand jury, been 3-4 years ago now. And we had those people before us, and you should have heard some of the stories that they told us on the grand jury. Those people getting rich on that machinery.
Oh, no question about that. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I don't see, personally, I don't see where the county unit system would stop that. Now, it might cut down on it some, but I don't see where
It
it would
wouldn't
stop.
eliminate it altogether.
Not if they all,
No,
you know.
no.
Some of those.
Okay, if it's the opinion of the board, we won't get involved in this one. They'll let the MEC fight it out with them by themselves. Now, the item on the expense allowance for members of the legislature, I might surprise some of you here this afternoon, because in my opinion, this needed to be done. And I'm going to tell you why. As the thing stands at the present time, a member of the legislature receives $3,000 for an annual session. This is what he gets, and he has to pay his expenses out of that $3,000. Of course, he's given, I forget what it is, $22 a day in for special sessions. But in $22.50. But in a regular session, he has $3,000. The sessions are becoming more and more lengthy each year, 5-6 months at the least now, which means that after about the third month, the lobbyists are able to take over and run that legislature. This is what's happened to us in the past. This is how they've passed the increase in the sales tax and things of this kind. The boys come to town, they're pretty strong, the majority of them are, and they'll fight till the money starts running out. Then they're faced with the prospects of having to accept gratuities and what have you, meals and so forth from some of the lobbyists, the truckers, the all interest, the Retail Merchants Association, and they got bukus of money to spend. Therefore, I say that this piece of legislation to give them an expense allowance while they're in session will have an awful lot to do with eliminating the influence of the various special interest groups over there.
You think that little bit would have all that much influence, Troy?
It'll have quite a bit on some of them over there. I really do think so.
I know this, we lost a good man from Harrison County because he says he lost money. when
They
he was
can't
up here.
afford to run. This has happened time and again, you see. I know that this was a political risk and a liability on parts of some of the members of the legislature, but I think it might be good for us to take a position on this thing, let it be known that we approve it.
Rather than do that, I think they should increase their pay.
Okay?
If they need more money, they should increase their pay, rather than go at it in that way. I'm not in accord with that.
Well, let me ask you, the House has done voted this original motion.
Well, here's what the situation is. There was a bill passed in the Senate to give them $15 a day. It got to the House, it was voted down on the first try. It was held on a motion to reconsider. And then they amended the bill to cut it down from $15 to $12.50. And that was voted on the last session. It's still on a motion to reconsider yet. It hasn't passed yet. But this means that the two versions will have to have a conference of the committees from both houses and agree on what bill they want to report out.
Let me ask this, is this bill only to apply to this session, or is it to apply to...
No, it'll apply to all regular sessions,
90 days, right?
but it'll only be for a period of 90 days.
I think they ought to vote to raise their pay if they need more money.
Well, we can do this in this situation. We can take a position that we feel that the legislature itself is grossly underpaid.
I agree with that.
That in order to attract the proper people to office, to this particular office, that we feel that the legislature was right in voting themselves an expense allowance, but they should give serious consideration to carrying this thing much further and set the salaries of the members of the legislature at a high enough level to attract the right people to run for office. This would be, in my thinking, the proper approach to it, you see. And you've done what you said.
I agree with that.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
it's hard to say whether the legislature's underpaid or not. I think if you look back on the past 3-4 sessions, $3,000 a year is not a lot of money if they're going to consume the amount of time down here that they're consuming. I think what we really need is an annual session and limited. They'll come down here then prepared to go to work, and they'll get the work done. Over an increase in salary, your daily expense, you know, if you've got a limit of 90 days, what that can exceed. Well, you can raise them to $4,000 per regular session. If they gonna come down here, instead of taking care of their business, spend 9 months in session out of that year, they're still underpaid. So what we need to do is not bring the people into town to party and listen to the pressure groups for 2 or 3 months and then get down to business. Come down here prepared to do the business and get on out of town.
Well, you might want to give this whole thing some careful thought and consideration instead of just approaching it from a limited point of view. There was a bill introduced the other day that would set up a legislative study group that would in effect make proposals, prepare proposals for the oncoming session of the legislature. This is one. We adopted a resolution at our convention about 4 years ago, I think it was, in support of a one-house unicameral legislative body. Now, this legislature is going to have to again deal with reapportionment because they're under the guns of the court again. An additional congressional redistricting, they're going to have to consider this question of reapportionment. And since the courts have ruled that both bodies have to be done on a population basis, it appears to me that this matter of considering a one-house proposition has more merit now than it ever did before. And that in dealing with this thing, maybe we can touch on that also, that we feel, one, that the legislature should give serious consideration to abolishing the two-house system, adopting a unicameral body such as Nebraska has, that the salaries of the members of the legislature be set sufficiently high to attract the right people to office, and that the legislature be convened on an annual basis with a definite time limit. We can cover the whole field if you take this approach to it, you see. That's a pretty big order, but that's the situation. Now, we've already took a position on the one house thing. We've already took a position on the legislature should be properly apportioned, which means that we have authority to act on this already. We've adopted a resolution, I believe, that the legislature should be convened annually with a definite time period. We took action on that. And the only thing we'll really be doing here is to reaffirming our position, as I see it. Does anybody disagree with that?
That's about it.
That's about it right there.
Well, we'll just
in a long range.
Yeah, we'll just deal with the matter as it comes up and try to do the best we can in line with our past policy. Unless you think that you want to release a statement, something like that. Otherwise, I don't think it'd be necessary for you to spell it out here this afternoon.
Well, I'll tell you the truth, something's got to be done because this is what's promoting the crooked politics in our state right now is the people ain't getting paid the darn thing for what they're doing, and that's what causes a man to go crooked. To tell you the truth, if he's running for that job, it's going to cost him money in the long run. If he's an honest man, it'll cost him money. So,
well, that's the reason we're in the shape we're in. The lobbyists rule over there. You see, you've got so many, especially lawyers, that own a retainer fee by some corporation. Jake George Payne Cossett from up there in Tallahatchie, a real key man in the legislature. There's no telling how many corporations and what have you's got him on the retainer fee. Well, you know who he's going to represent.
Mississippi Fire and Lake.
Right. Okay, we'll just do the best with it that we can.
He and Baxter
Now,
are roommates at Old
Bob, I was waiting till you got back because I wanted to bring this matter up with whether or not they want to try to let this milk commission die take a position on all, we're talking about legislative items now. You and I were talking about it the other day, and the fact that you thought it would be a good place for us to establish some good relations with the consumers in the state because of this commission, that they've set prices. They just recently hiked the price on milk, as most of you know. And that, the legislature will, if this commission stays alive, they're gonna have to reenact the legislation that keeps it alive at this session. So, would you like to address yourself to that a minute, Bob?
Well, just, I thought, as you and I were discussing, that would be a very good way to reach the housewives in the state, because I imagine all of them are pretty unhappy about the increase in price of milk. I'm not a housewife, but next to my whiskey, I like my milk. And I'm unhappy about that milk rise too. And we've got a bunch of these women in the state looking with more favor on labor unions, whether they're men folks are in unions now or not. It might make the entire job of organizing, affiliation, retaining members, and everything else a little bit easier. Plus the fact that I'm just inherently against the dadgum price fixing law.
I don't see no justification for the commission at all myself. That's my personal
These
feeling.
people do all that belly aching around here and beating their breast and tearing their hair about free enterprise. If
Right.
there's anything that isn't free enterprise, that's it.
That's it.
I don't think he's gonna use to make a speech about it. I'll talk 2 or 3 hours on it if necessary, though.
Well, just, in order that they understand what the situation is there.
Doris says it's not necessary.
Not necessary. Would you like to take a position on this?
In other words, called,
That we support the abolishment of the milk
the
commission?
abolishment of the.
Right.
Then stand strictly to the competitive market to the
Right.
price of milk.
Yeah, go back to free enterprise.
We don't find any useful purpose to be had in maintaining the state milk commission.
If we need a milk commission, why don't we need a potato commission?
That's right. That's a good analogy of that situation. Good comparison.
I move, Mr. Chairman, that we go on record as supporting the abolishment of the
Of the milk, state milk commission. We get a second on that
I'll
motion?
second.
Have any further discussion? Not all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carried and so ordered. Now that's all of the items that I've brought up here to discuss with you, present to you, and find out if you want to take a position on matters that will be before this current session. Do you have any others that you would like to bring up?
What about this item of, abolishing this office of Justice of the Peace and Constable?
Further abolishment of JP.
Is there anything
Uh,
coming up about that you
There's
know of?
proposed legislation along this line, aren't there?
Well, I understand that legislation to this effect will be introduced. And maybe you just want to take a position that we abolish all positions, all judge positions. Maybe that's the position. All judges be abolished.
No, and this is no reflection on any group, but, I just got off the grand jury where we were doing some investigating, and I'll tell you, if there's anything corrupt in the state of Mississippi, in my estimation, and if you'll get down and investigate in your own county, right, you'll find out what the people of the state of Mississippi elect and support in their elective offices, and there's honest JPs and constables, they are in our area, and they are everywhere else. But the thing about it, this is another one of the things that makes Mississippi the most backward state in the nation. And when that's done away with and we get a little more efficient situation right there, that'll just be another black mark out off of the state. So,
Ms. Kelly, are you for JPs or not?
I heard you talk. I already talked to Evan Gandy, she said just forget it, and I didn't get anywhere with it. What are you trying to do? My job with information?
No, this was no reflection on anybody, but,
Well,
what I'm
maybe
talking
the
about
thing
is,
that should be considered here is to set certain qualifications for a JP.
well, now, that right there would
Instead of
set it,
abolishing the system itself.
that would set it in order right there if it was set qualifications.
Mr. Chairman, as I stated a while ago, I was on the grand jury too, and I can vouch for what he said. an
Well, I don't have to have
fact.
been on a grand jury. I get stuck with them every once in a while with a speeding ticket. I can vouch for some of their
Of course,
inefficiency myself.
if you're speeding, well, you don't have much kick.
It's a law violator, he's out of luck.
Yeah, but I've run into a number of these speed traps they set up on, down about Mount Olive where they catch you coming and going and run you in there one right behind the other. I know what some of them are doing. They're in collusion with the state highway, patrol, see?
Yeah, I've been down there, I know too.
Most of you remember the case in Forest County that, drew quite a bit of attention
Yeah,
several years
yeah,
ago.
he picked me up 2 or 3 times.
Well, this same man that was, the allegations had been, charged against, in his testimony, testified that he was a 6th grade, education man. And he made the statement to the prosecuting attorney, with a 6th grade education, certainly you don't expect me to keep a perfect set of books, do you? He says no, and he says neither would I expect the electorate to elect a man with a 6th grade education to administer justice. See? So this is what you.
Maybe Forest County, and I know personally some of the things that Frank Bound was referring to, and I would say probably Forest County has more than its share of this corruption within these 2 offices of constable and justice of peace. I personally know of several constables in the last 8 years that have flipped their lids while in office, having gotten in so deep until they had to be asked to resign, and 1 or 2 even left not only the area but the state. I personally know of justice of peaces that have rented property to put their office up, and it got so bad until the guy that owned the property got the sheriff and threw him out and run him off. Now Forest County is probably among the number 1 in this state for corruption in the office of justice of peace and constable. Now I dare say they haven't got one in Forest County now that's fitting to shoot.
Well, there ain't no question.
Personally, but I'd say there's not one now that's fitting to shoot right this area.
There's no question we got some real stinkers in some of these JP positions. Some of them it's not qualified. But the other side of this coin here is, if you abolish the JP office, then you might well be creating a situation whereby these poor people would have to go hire a lawyer.
Well, they should have a small claims court like a lot of others.
Well, the State Bar Association is a group that's going to introduce this legislation that Bounds is referring to here, I understand. Again, this is another one of these areas that we might just have to play by ear, and we might seriously give this one some serious thought. And it appears to me that in the absence of change in the system, that maybe the next best thing would be to think about setting higher qualifications for people to run for this office, or as an educational requirement.
I think that'd be the
This might be
easiest
the
thing, because you
best
don't.
approach to it. You see. There is some merit in the JP system. You can tell your husband I said that.
I'd like to ask Doris, is it true that the JP's office is pretty well used for a collecting agency, Doris? Is that a big portion of their work?
A good part of it is, I don't know how some of these JPs operate without education and some law experience, really.
Yeah.
I don't know what the qualifications, I was thinking it was a 10th grade education, but it may not even be that. I believe though it is. I know the Peace Officers Association is working on this thing, and I think they're going to come up with some recommendation for higher qualifications, and they certainly need it. I know the state auditors, the way they stay, or in Tommy's office, or the way they check them here in Jackson. Of course, I know he's being bigger than, some of these ones scattered out, but now a good part of it is collection.
Doris, isn't
Some of it is in connection with Garner Sheehan's too.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean, isn't that what?
Yeah.
Well, I've had my experience with
Such
it.
as that.
Well, do you want to refer this one to the executive committee as you did the other one? I frankly don't think we're in a position to make an intelligent decision on it here this afternoon.
We were up at the hospital, they're talking to Edmund Gandy, and Tommy just mentioned that to her, and she said that she didn't think anything at all, you know, would come of it, that she could tell. If it does, they do need, even though that is part of our living, they do need to do a lot with that.
It might be that they'll come up with their own recommended changes.
I think, well, they do
Suffices.
plan, they have a committee working on it, I know just from a meeting they had here the other day, peace officers themselves.
You want to refer this to the?
I'd like to refer it to the executive committee.
Brother Mounds will offer a motion.
To make some sort of consideration about it. We got a mess.
Yes, sir.
Peace council all over there again.
Executive committee, we have a second on that motion.
I second.
Any further discussion? Not all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carried, so ordered. We have any other items anybody wants to bring up?
I'd just like to say before blank when I came in this morning, though, we've got a specific bill.
Well, now, if you want to take a position, I mean, it might be a good idea on this particular bill,
Yeah.
to take a position on that in addition to what you've already done, but I assume that motion covered the whole thing, you see. Would you like to offer a motion in support or opposition to what they've done? Nail this particular bill down?
Well, I don't know, are you in a position now of supporting it or not supporting it?
I haven't done anything because I was waiting for this board meeting. I didn't think that I should. If we hadn't had a board meeting, what I would have done was got hold of the executive committee and found out whether they thought we ought to take a position on it or not.
Well, do you think by any stretch of the imagination, if we were to go on record as supporting that bill, for the expense payment, that it would, in any way ingratiate us with any of those
Yes,
people?
it will.
You think it would?
Yes, if you check the voting record of the people out that voted for the bill, especially in the Senate, you'll find most of our friends supported the bill.
Well,
This applies to the House also. And what frankly this will do is that I'll be in a position to advise them while we,
That's the case, I mean.
if,
if it's the case, I'd change my opinion. I mean, I'd vote to support the bill if you think it would help us.
well, frankly, what's going on here is these boys are looking down the road. About 2 or 3 months from now, when the heat really gets on, and Harvey West, you remember, is going to be wielding a big stick. And this battle is going to be over highway financing and 1 or 2 other matters. So that's the reason I say this. Now, the statement was made on the floor about this type of stuff, you see.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I reverse myself completely, and I move that we go on record as supporting that bill for
The
the
expense allowance.
for the
has been
expense
voted.
allowance.
I'll second.
But I'd like to say this, I think we should go further, as you indicated, and try to get them to consider raising their
Well,
salaries.
this was covered by that other motion.
That was covered by the other motion.
But what you're doing now is pinpointing this immediate
This
situation.
bill.
All right, we got that motion. It was seconded by Brother Nikkei. Do we have any further discussion?
I'd like to ask a question, just for some opinions.
Yeah.
We know that there's legislators comes into town that has room tabs picked up, meal tabs picked up, in-town expense tabs picked up. Now, is this going to eliminate some of that?
It won't eliminate all of it. It won't eliminate all of it, but it will certainly cut it down to a minimum. There's some of these people in this legislature that they are really looking for a handout. And they up for sale for anybody that puts up the most money. But they're not in a majority. And what this will do is make it possible for the guys that are really sincere and wants to hold the line. You see, what happens in this thing is they run out of money, and in order to get it over with, 1 or 2 of them will change their vote. You see, the last time when they enacted that half-cent sales tax increase, as a good example, the first attempt was made in the House to bring this matter up. They couldn't even get a 2/3 vote to suspend the rules to bring the matter up for a vote. See, this was an indication that they were a long ways from having the strength to pass the bill. Well, this was a test vote. They left that cotton picking bill sit there on that calendar for week after week until these boys began to get hungry, and then they start putting the squeeze on them all kinds of ways. And they brought it up for a vote, and it failed by the exact number required. The following day, they brought it up on a motion to reconsider. They found out who they had to work on and went to work on them, and they changed one vote and passed it. Now, with them having this allowance, it makes it easier for them to hold the line.
Well, evidently, some of them over there think they need that.
Well, like I tell you, the better members of the House and the Senate, the people that are really dependable, are the ones that really supported the bill. Yeah.
In other words, to be honest, this will give them enough to eat on.
Right. $12.50 a day is not much money, to stay in a hotel. That's all.
Let me say two things. I don't think this first thing is necessary to say. I think you'll do it. But be dadgum sure to say, now look, big boy, I'm scratching your back. You gonna scratch mine a little further down the road.
Well, this is gonna help. This is the importance of this right now, what you're doing now.
Number two, let's see if we can't give consideration somewhere to limiting the length of time a legislature can stay in session. 60 days is enough. First 30 days to introduce bills and the last 30 days to pass them.
Well, we acted on that while you were outside.
I'm sorry.
That's been done.
Take it back.
All right, you have this motion. Are you having further discussion?
Just a thought. My thought has been this. I don't believe there's anyone here that doesn't have some method of defraying expense even for the day. If you are out of town in here. Most of us are reimbursed expenses. Over average time spent, $3,000 is a low salary, we recognize that, but by the same token, it could be a pretty fair salary. Now, the $12.50 a day for expenses will take them off of the mercies of the vulture, that's the proper word. And we're in a position to say, now look at here, we are supporting you for a livable expense account within session legislation. That's
Right.
right.
Oh, any other discussion? Not all in favor of the motion signify to say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carried and so on. And we still have a couple of other items on the agenda that won't take too much time. Maybe we can get through here before too long, allow you people from out of town the opportunity to get on the road and get home before dark. We'll make a special effort to do that. We got Brother Knight and myself got to talking about the need the other day of the state council taking out a booth at the state fair. We've talked about this proposition before at one time, and I don't know what happened that we decided we couldn't do it, but in order to do this, we have to start well in advance and reserve the space, and he has got all the information available, and I'd like for him to review this with you and find out then if you want to go ahead and reserve space and take a booth out at the state fair this fall, this coming fall. The night you want to go on that?
First, this was, I think, 3 years ago. We started late. At that time, they hadn't erected the number of buildings that they now have. And a lot of these exhibits were placed in tents. The tents were rented from a tent concern in Memphis. We found that if we got the tent to hold as large as we needed, and got it down here, that with the space, it would have run, I believe, between $250 and $275 for 6 days. So much for that. Last week I called Mr. Hamm, the administrative director of the Fire Commission. They now have spaces available in the buildings. We can get a booth 10 by 10, 10 feet deep, 10 feet across, for $87.50. This is Monday morning through Saturday night. Now, we can get a corner booth in either of the 4 corners of the building, which is a little more, you might say, secluded away, particularly on one side. that is 100 for the 6 days. Now, this includes lighting and everything without you have some special display that requires special lighting or power, something, that takes electric power.
that
The
also-
lighting is all included
Is that
here.
also 10 by 10?
10 by 10, right. In the corner, a 10 by 10 corner booth, $100 for 6 days. 10 by 10 somewhere else in the middle of the building, $87.50. Now, of course, I don't think this would apply to us because we had in mind if we went through with a thing like this, with your approval, that different unions, different members from different unions would man the booth each day. Now, there's a week's ticket, season ticket, they call it, to take out, in case a person, of course, per person is 50 cents admission at the gate, but the week ticket is $2. So if the same person's gonna be going in and out, $2 for the whole week. As I say, I don't think this would apply to us because we would probably have different people manning the booth each day. Now, what we thought in connection with this was, if you felt that we should pursue this, would be to contact the various unions, get them to contact the employers, and we'd have a display of the various union-made products and what have you. We would provide some program by which people would register. We would have ample trade union literature there, and we would let them register, and then each night at the close of the fair, we would give away some small item, maybe with something a little special on Saturday night, something of this, which we felt would be an unusually good public relations stunt, because there's thousands of people go through this fair. So that's the deal, but he told me that, I told him I wanted this information to take up with the board, and that I'd probably contact him one day next week, and we'd look at it further. If you all felt we ought to pursue this, if you want to appoint a committee or leave it up to us, whatever you want to do.
I think we couldn't do a better thing than to have a booth up there. We need a little advertising in Mississippi besides what newspapers has given us.
Incidentally, the fair this time is October 10th through 15th.
It's already been set. Frankly, if you vote to set up the booth, what we'll do is get in touch with the various unions that we know will be interested, such as Amalgamated and the Lady Garment Workers, who I know will be interested in and giving away prizes and stuff like this. They always do, and any in the building trades groups, I'm sure that will want to have some displays on in the booth, I don't think I think the $100, if you take the corner booth, will be about the extent of the expense for the organization. I think that we can get enough material and cooperation and support out of the AFL-CIO, our international unions, whereby it won't be a whole lot of extra cost involved. We can probably work out something with the union label departments of the Amalgamated and the ILG, especially these two, maybe one or two others,
We can probably
that
get some,
they will man the booth and keep somebody on the booth even, you see.
we can probably get some material from Joseph Lewis of the Building and Service Trades Department.
Right.
The Union Labor and Service Trades Department on all of the shops.
Right.
Would the price be any cheaper on 2 spaces?
Say 2 10 by 10, 2 10, in other words, a 10 by 20.
Right?
I didn't ask him this, Bob. It might be, it's very doubtful, but it might be $5 or something.
Well,
Less if you take a 20-foot front.
we kicked this thing around some, too, all 3 of us have. And I was thinking of trying also to make a display there of as many of the union-made products in this state as we possibly could. Now, 10 by 10 wouldn't accommodate
I
that.
realize this, if you.
Yeah, we got much
Yeah,
participation. But you go down the line and think of all of the different things that are made by union people, tires, masonite board, flint coat, all of that kind of stuff. So you need more space.
The thought that's been running through my mind is a display of the employers throughout the state who has union
We
contracts.
can make that on the board, and I think there would
Right.
be more expense to it than just what we're talking about. We're gonna have to have some racks or tables or something on which to place this stuff. We're probably gonna have to have some lettering on the various and sundry, signs and, things that we want. Of course, we might be able to prevail on the carpenters to help us out on some of that at a nominal cost, and the sign painters and so on.
Right.
But there will be some more cost to it.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah, if we approach it from that angle, this is true. If we go into
I
that
said,
angle.
this is just a basic rent.
Yeah, we just talked.
Let me ask you
Oh,
one
I
question.
think out of the National AFL-CIO, they have a union, display every year. They have it sometime in Chicago or Cincinnati or something. We might get some assistance from those people.
Oh, we will. No question about this. Now, the thing about it is, if you want to go into it from the point of view that you referred to there, it would certainly be more expensive. It might also be more effective. This way, that's what we're looking for, is to be effective.
Paul, we've had a little experience on this. The amalgamated such, just us, just the one union, has done this at the South Mississippi Fair in Laurel, Mississippi, about, probably 3 times in the last 10 years. And we had a space just for our one union, as large or larger than you're talking about. And just from the companies that we got under contract, we filled that booth. And we had enough stuff to give away every night, and some left over. Some nights we'd even have to give away several items in order to exhaust the supply of items for the last night. So, we will participate, but I'm gonna have to agree with Brother Starnes. I'm afraid you're gonna run out of space if there's gonna be much participation.
Well, of course, this would have to be a determination made, contact these locals, let them contact their companies
That's right.
and see how
I
much
think the
stuff we're
degree of
gonna recruit.
participation would probably govern the amount of space you
It
have to
would,
have.
it would. This is something I'd have to discuss with Han. Say, see if we could take, say, a 10 by 20 space tentatively until a certain date. See what I mean? Then if it turned out that we couldn't use it, we could relinquish that. By the same token, maybe have option on more, and if it turned out we didn't need it, we could relinquish that. That would be about the only way you could do
It
it.
wouldn't take my organization long to find out, for we broke the ice and we've asked these companies for this stuff before for this same purpose, and they'd give it. So they'd be familiar with it, and it wouldn't be long till we'd be in a position to know about what our participation would be, but it'd take longer over the state, I'm sure.
Actually, most of these companies has their own display in some form or another. That, you might be able to even get that used without having to come up with or make it
I
display.
remember that thing we had at Macomb that time. We had one at Macomb where we had, shipyard sent up a little model boat, stuff like that.
That was what I was fixing to ask the question on. Is there gonna be any provision of insurance on these exhibits in this? Because if we get into it down from the shipyard, there's gonna be some expensive items that they're gonna, of course, would demand protection on.
We'd have to-
This building's locked and they have guards, don't they? I mean, they did at Laurel. It was a completely blocked building. They closed the doors at night and policemen guarded all night long. So
They've got unusually good facilities down there.
They locked the door and got this company. In that case, they would demand some insurance.
Right, we'd have to find out what they're liable for. What the deal is. For instance, Marvin Taylor probably knows this. Talking about exhibits, the property local in Biloxi did have a complete miniature house built by members of that local FAR, this fair. Have you seen that, Marvin, that Sam Stark and them got there in the home?
No.
They got a complete miniature dwelling house, union made.
Well, we went into this thing,
This thing that Robbie's talking about in Macomb. I think that's
yeah.
what they mean, that's what.
How long have you got to let the guy know whether you're gonna do that?
Well, I told him, my brother Neat Case, that I would call him right after the 15th, see? And let him know. Now, he told me there's plenty of space available at the present time, but now I would imagine that people are gonna begin to speak for this
It
stuff
won't be
right
long,
away,
you
see?
got to get it nailed down right
So
away.
we'd have to get on this and.
If I remember, one of the things we run into before, I know in the Central Labor Union, I believe when we discussed it, was somebody to go down and sit every day. But now with the union label having us, that would probably I remember one of the objections that nobody had the time to go or wanted to go. But if we're
Yeah.
gonna do it, I think we ought.
This is that-
One way or another, we
Way.
can provide some people,
Yeah.
even if it means assign a staff person
Yeah,
to
and
come
I
up.
think largely, as much as we can, man the thing with ladies. People will listen to them and talk to them quicker than they will a little boy.
Well, if I know them amalgamated in the Early Garment Workers Union, they'll furnish some people to do this.
We will, personally.
Yeah,
One way or another, we got local.
I'm sure that they'll, both unions would be glad.
Find
since
organizer or
ladies-
business agent.
We might-
You got women members.
We might
around, you know,
get
all
some of the-
unions you mentioned.
Well,
We
see,
might
I
get
think
some of
here-
the girls out of the paper mill down in Morris Point, some of the CWA people.
Office
I don't
work.
think this will be any problem. Well, this is gonna be a pretty good project. Would you like to,
Claude, I got one suggestion, and this is, again, from our own experience. We went into this thing from two angles. One was, we wanted the publicity of letting the people that visited the fair know that unions did exist in this section of the world.
yeah,
And we had certain literature, if we had a program on against some particular employer that we didn't want to buy their products, we managed to pass this out. But we also passed out certain other useful information, some of it not even connected with the labor movement.
yeah.
Like I think we've had some social security leaflets and what have you. But the one thing we did that could be very helpful, we got everybody's name and address that registered at our booth
Right, this is.
and maintained them. Then if you ever really had a need later on an issue that labor was vitally concerned with, you've already got about 40 or 50,000 names and addresses of people that's not necessarily union members that you could immediately do a mail-in to, and you'd have a tremendous start on any sort of publicity you want to feed to the consumer or the general public.
Correct.
Well, this would be one of the good things that come out of it.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think we're in a position to make any final decision on the amount of space or just what you want in the display. But I think that you can take a position that you do want a booth at the fair, and probably place this also in the hands of the executive committee to make the necessary arrangements. You can do it that way, or set up a committee off of the board to do this.
I make a motion that, the executive committee investigate this thing, and they have the right to decide how large a booth to get and what have you,
Act as they see fit.
after they see fit.
Okay, that covered, that gives you some leeway to act in, and Brother Knight can go ahead and check all of this out, and then we can call the executive committee together. We might want to invite Brother Jackson, maybe Russell Mike May, and 2, 3 more in for this meeting. We can ask them to check with the internationals and find out what they can do. We can check around with some of the others the same way, then we can have a meeting of the committee.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a request, mention with this. I would like to ask that in case you're tired of, 2 heads is better than one. Anytime, in case you're tired of and can't go, I'd like to request that another member of the committee go with me down
Yeah.
and look at this.
Look at the space.
Let him take us to the building and show us. And a lot of times you can get a pretty good idea, you know, by looking at the space. as to
Well, I tell you what
really
we can really
you
do
think
in this
you ought to
thing.
try to do.
We can set a time and take the whole committee down and look the place over. Do that. Don't you think?
Well, this is, but I just.
Well, at least we can take, we can get both Jack and you and myself, 4 members of the committee,
Yeah.
to go and look the thing over before we call a meeting of the committee. This might be the best thing to do, save you a trip
As
over.
far as I'm concerned, just go from that point.
And I think this needs to be done one day
Right,
this
Mitch.
next week.
Car.
Yeah, it ought to be done right away.
It's gonna begin to fill up down there.
You better start making calls on finding out what you're gonna be able to put in it too.
Yeah.
That's gonna govern how much
So,
space.
you know, some of those buildings, people don't go in very often, too.
Yeah.
Some get, you know better.
We want, as I say, we wanna make sure we get the best possible location down there.
Well, the motion is that the this question be referred, that we, let's see, how, phrase your motion again, Brother Nicky, so let me make sure then.
That the executive committee, go ahead and investigate this thing and decide on what size space they were gonna get and how much
And make arrangements for a state.
yeah, uh-huh.
Okay. We did have a second. Do we have any further discussion on that? Not all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carried and so ordered. We'll talk with you, Jack, and Bert about some dates that you will be able to go down.
I'm ready to go anytime.
You ready and available, man?
Any hour, any day.
So we'll talk with Jack.
Bert,
We'll talk with Jack.
You can't go before right now,
No, I can't go
No.
right now.
I got two other items left here. I believe that will have covered everything that I had listed down to cover the agenda. You received notice in the bulletin about the COPE conference on March the 4th. And I want to ask Brother Knight to give him an opportunity to urge you to, in turn, urge your membership to attend the conference. You want to have a word to say on that, Tom?
Well, just briefly, what I did, I give the president of the central bodies and the area ward chairman advance notice of this thing for one reason, before the credentials and the regular call went out. Inasmuch as they're the people primarily responsible for the political education program at the central body level, and told them to get together and attempt to work out the best arrangements possible whereby both of them, if at all possible, could attend this one-day conference. Now, of course, not only them, we're not placing them in a more important position actually than we are anybody else, but I would appreciate each and every one of you, every local you come in contact with, to ask them to at least, if at all possible, to try to send at least one delegate to this conference. Because this is going to be most important, inasmuch as this is a year that we either re-elect, I'm talking about nationwide now, re-elect the present 89th Congress, Liberal Congress, or else this is a year where we lose this majority we've had, wherein we've got a lot of legislation. And then one other thing that I would like to urge you to do, as we did in the area meeting, the Coke Dollar Drive. I know some of you have already worked on this, maybe others haven't. But this year in 1966, the Coke Dollar Drive is more important than it's ever been. As I told the people in these area meetings, the least thing we can do, if we can't send a liberal congressman to Washington from Mississippi, least thing we can do is to send our Coke dollars through our international, on to national Coke, where it can be dispersed out to the states that can send a liberal congressman to Washington. Our money helps elect some liberal congressmen, but they're from Michigan or California or somewhere like that. So never before in the history of the labor movement has the Coke Dollar Drive been as important as it is right now, because as you know, tradition has it that what we refer to as an off-election year, the party in power is at a disadvantage. We know the John Birch Society, the National Right to Work Committee, all of the rabble-rousers have gone at this thing lock, stock, and barrel, and they're going to do their best. I was reading in Coke Memo the other day, and maybe in the little publication of the National Democratic Committee, they were called the Democrat, where the conservative forces of the Democratic Party, for that matter, particularly the Goldwaterites of the Republican Party, have at their disposal just unlimited funds. You know, Barry Goldwater's got him an organization set up within the Republican Party, and they have one target, and that's to elect back those reactionaries that were defeated in '64, and in addition to them, elect some others. So we all know they've got funds. So never before has this Coke Dollar Drive been as important. And I'd like to urge each one of you to do everything you can to see that there's one conducted in your local. And if you need any help in the literature, why, you contact us. And also remind you that the Coke Conference is important. There'll be a lot of good speakers there and things that we all need to know. And I would like very much, I realize that Houston, Texas is not very convenient to us, but that's where they've set it, so we don't have any choice. But I would like to see a real good delegation for Mississippi. Matter of fact, I'd like Mississippi to have about as many people there as Arkansas has got. I don't think we can compete with Texas and Louisiana, but I'd like to see every organization in this state send at least one person. And if you'll contact your neighbor local or your neighbor central body, I'm sure, as a matter of fact, I've already talked to central body people that are now trying to work out a transportation pool whereby it will be cheaper on everybody concerned to go. And of course, Claude and I don't know when we'll have to go. Usually they want us maybe for a conference early, but if the council cars can be available, then we will carry everybody that we can carry free of charge to your local or central body.
Yeah, you sent the call out.
Yeah, the call's going.
You got the call. Okay. Got another item that we want to discuss with you briefly. That's the general affiliation problem. We have made some progress on the affiliation problem. We picked up some new locals, but we still have, this still remains one of our major problems, is getting these locals affiliated. We seem to have more success with the newly organized than we do with the old established groups. We've touched on the Negro part of it, we won't go into that again. But it has occurred to me, after talking with some people at the international level, regional and state directors and even presidents of international unions, that we might well consider the possibility of sending, especially the state and regional directors, this quarterly standing of affiliates that we send out, and keep them advised on the affiliation situation. I can cite you one example of what I'm thinking about. We had this brick and clay local union in Meridian that became delinquent. And I talked with the Secretary Treasurer of the brick union in San Francisco, and he told me if I'd write him a letter when I got back that he'd see that local got straightened out, and he would go to work on getting the one in Pascagoula affiliated. And it might well be that if we kept the internationals posted and sent the quarterly standing to them, that we might be able to not only pick up some affiliates, but keep the ones we've got from dropping out, because we're fighting a continual fight to keep locals from dropping out. And if we get the support of the international, in some cases it'll make the difference. So I want you to consider that, see what you think about that. The unions that we have good affiliation from are the ones that we get good support from the international level on. This is an indisputable fact. What we could do is sit down and work up a list of regional and state directors and put them on our mailing list and send the quarterly standing out to them when we send it out to the board. See, it'd just be a matter of running off additional copies, would be a very little additional expense involved.
My opinion, I think we all have hit on the exact point that's gonna keep the affiliation there. If you could get the internationals interested enough to put the pressure on the local unions, certainly there are people that can get the job done where we can't even talk to them.
George Meany hit this question harder at this last convention than I've ever seen it hit. And I think that this is going to get some of the international unions off of their rosters. I really do. They adopted a pretty strong resolution on this affiliation thing, and the fact that more and more of the work of the labor movement, politically, legislatively, and what have you, as a matter of necessity is being carried by the state councils and the local central bodies. And Meany hit this thing real hard at the convention, and I found some of these international people much more receptive as a result than they've ever have been before. Even Wood has been talking favorably. Or whatever bring them around, I don't know, but they're beginning to see what has to be done. If we can ever get them around, we ought not have any problem with anybody else.
I hope we all live to see it.
What do you think about the idea? Do you see anything wrong with it?
Do you want a motion to this?
Yes, it would be better to do it.
Well, I move that this campaign be conducted among these state and regional
We
directors.
send the standing of affiliates out each quarter to the state and district directors. We'll have to figure out who should get them. In some cases, we might have to send them to the president of international unions in absence of a regional director. Any further discussion? Not all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carried and so ordered. Now, that's all I had on the agenda. Brother Taylor mentioned something here this morning about the Dixon situation and his proposal to again start filibustering 14B, and he mentioned something about he thought it might be good for us to adopt a resolution and publicize it. The fact that Dirksen thinks that the filibustering 14B, stopping the Senate from voting, is more important than the Vietnam effort, and I think that this is a very good idea.
More important than winning the war.
Right. Do you have,
Mr. President,
you have something ready?
between speeches, and I have come up with a little something here. It would be subject to quite a little bit of editing, which I'd be perfectly willing to have done, dealing with these two subjects, which was a matter that was talked about this morning, as maybe having a resolution come at the convention on this Vietnam situation. So I had thought that we could probably incorporate these two and let it go from here currently. And if you don't mind, if you want to take the time.
Yeah, let's have it. We need to act on it. I think that the board needs to act on this. You could take a whack at support the administration's position on Vietnam and take a slap at Dirksen in the same thing. Maybe that's what you're doing.
It's taking time, but I live about as far as anybody. I don't know.
Oh, well, you get away, you can get out of here.
Maybe he lives, no, about the same, I guess, Wayne. But here's what it is, for whatever it may be worth and whatever you want to do with it. And it's two separate, and it's not long, and I'll read it kind of rapidly if I can, because it's not too well written, and the spelling's not too good, and so on and so forth. And this is a Vietnam thing, this first one. Whereas in carrying out the commitments of previous national administrations, both Republican and Democratic, in Vietnam, our present national administration finds it necessary to move forward and forcefully to the extent of sending in approximately 200,000 military personnel at the present time, with probably more and more to follow, and whereas approximately $12 billion additional may be needed in the fiscal year of 1966 to continue this effort, in order to bring it to a successful conclusion, be it therefore resolved that the Mississippi AFL-CIO go on record as supporting our present and proposed actions in Vietnam in any way possible and to the fullest extent, in order that the matter may be brought to a successful conclusion at the earliest possible date.
Very good. Very good.
Number 2. Whereas Section 14B of Taft-Hartley was repealed by the House of Representatives in 1965, but was filibustered in the Senate, and adjournment coming without a vote on the measure, and whereas extended debate as such is not needed on this subject, since it has been on the ballot for referendums in several states with wide coverage in communications media, and whereas Senator Dirksen the Representative Majority Leader has announced his intention to again mount a filibuster even if it delays necessary and required appropriation for our effort in Vietnam. Be it therefore resolved that the Mississippi AFL-CIO go on record as urging that in keeping with historic democratic processes and due to the gravity of the Vietnam situation, that this matter be immediately brought to a vote and decided on once and for all.
I think they're both very good. Like I say, you might want to do a little editing, rephrasing a little bit, but I think they're both good. Would you like to act on both of them at the same time, or you want to take them up separately? Would you like to offer motion that the two resolutions be adopted, Brother Taylor?
If that's in order, I will.
Yes, it's in order.
I second the motion.
We have any discussion? I think it's very appropriate right at this particular time.
I think, and he did an excellent job of drawing these two resolutions right here, but I think, we might give some consideration into integrating these two, resolutions, one supporting the administration's policy in Vietnam, and then, as you said, make note of the fact that, there's certain people that, consider section 14B of more importance even than this. In other words, if you could enter.
Well, what you're doing here is putting the finger on Dixon,
Yeah.
frankly, that he's jeopardizing the national effort in Vietnam by his
You can call him
filibuster
majority leader.
on 14B, and we gotta get across the fact that this filibuster is designed to keep this matter from coming to a vote. See? I think it's very good, and this is the way to put him on the spot.
I think the
We can rephrase him a
resolution
little
would be
bit,
better
touch
than
him up.
one, because it's.
I was thinking that they might,
It's actually two different things.
Just a little change, eh?
I was thinking we might get it in the papers, and also the
Yeah.
senators.
I think if you don't combine them, you'll get the first one in the papers and the second one will be thrown away.
Well, there's some way that you can bridge that over and combine it into one.
You can put the
that'd be
last
fine.
one right on behind the other one, almost.
Yeah, we can put them together.
Put them together.
This all right with you?
Yeah.
We'll sit down and see what we can do with it and try to work it in where we avoid what he's talking about, because I see the press might well do this. Right, with that thought in mind, we have a motion here now to adopt the two resolutions. Do we have any further discussion? Not all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carried, and so on. Now, I'm assuming now that the contents of this resolution, or these resolutions, when we put them in the final form, will be released to the press. Right?
Purpose, that was the whole purpose.
Really, the whole
purpose, sir.
Right,
I always like a
right.
copy of it sent to the Senate.
To the two senators, yeah. All right. Now, is there anything else that any other member of the board wants to bring up at the meeting? We had a pretty full day for you, we realize
very
this, but
good.
you've done a good job of getting through with it, huh?
Very good meeting, I think.
You went through with it good. I thought we'd be lucky if we got out by 4. It's on 3:15 now. Well, do we have anything else that we've done here today that you'd like to publicize? I can't think of anything that needs to be publicized, released to the press. And I'm afraid if we give them anything else, that they would play this other one down. So if we're going to release anything to the press, this would be the most important item to hit it with.
So there's just one item here that occurs to me. I thought about it just a little bit. I have been elected. This is more or less without any funds, but more or less an honor, as legislative representative of the State Council of Carpenters.
Congratulations. When you gonna come over?
And it just may be that that we could help a little bit in some areas.
Good.
But I was thinking this maybe that, and this might help the affiliation. If the reports that you plan to send out, starting pretty soon now,
Yeah.
it might be that you would want to, that the council would want to go along with sending these reports, say, to Peterman, who is the secretary of the State Council of Carpenters, enough that he in turn can send it to these unaffiliated local unions with this council. And he would be instructed, of course, and requested that he send this to all that are affiliated with the State Council of Carpenters. We've got people that are not even affiliated with us.
No kidding.
And so I was thinking maybe if this report got to all of our people, it might just have some
area.
salutatory effect on the situation.
Well, I think that this the thing that we might do, consider this if you would like. With this thought in mind that you, as legislative chairman, write these people, these locals, a letter and tell them that you have brought this matter before the State Council Executive Board and that you have recommended that they send copies of the legislative report, the weekly report, to them in order that they might better understand what the State Council is doing. That you're doing this because you want to encourage them to become affiliated. And we might try this for this time around and see what effect it might have on it. It wouldn't add too much to the cost, but before it's done, I think you should write these locals a letter. And instead of sending them to Peterman, just let us know who you want it to go to, and we'd send them out of here directly to them instead of doing this.
All right, I thought maybe
Somebody like to offer a motion to that effect?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Any discussion on the motion? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carried and so ordered. Now you go ahead and get your letter out and let us know who you want on the list. Very good idea. Right, that takes care of the business unless you have something to take up yourself. We have, Brother Knight has the expense vouchers. We have the checkbook with us. If you'd like to take time to make out your expense voucher, now get your check, you can. If you want to take the voucher home with you, fill it out and send it in to us. We can handle it either way.
Well, let me say this before we leave.
Well, before we break up, I'll be passing out the vouchers while he talks to you.
Just want to urge you, I know you've done this, but I want to urge you again to every member of every local you run into, ask them to please write Stennis and Easton. We want to bombard them rounders with every letter that we possibly can. We know we're not going to get
Even though it's not gonna do any good, let them know that there's people in this state that disagrees with what they're doing.
That's right. So urge everybody in
Get
the
'em off the
locals that you
filibuster.
come in contact with,
Get 'em
write
off
them,
the
carry
filibuster.
them a short note, let them know what your feelings are.
Well, I wrote both of them the other day myself and sent them a copy of this transcript. Wrote them a fairly strong letter on this thing, and a member or two of the board here has suggested that this transcript be sent out to all the local unions. Now, we don't need a motion to that effect,
Everybody got me?
but if you think that it would serve a purpose, we can proceed to do this.
I think it would, well, it certainly wouldn't hurt anything.
You see her, she like to clobbered me then. She just got through mailing that thing to all the high schools in the state, but it might be a good thing. We'll just go ahead and see what we can do and work out on this and send it out to all the affiliated, state affiliated, one to each local. No. I think we'll do this anyhow. We can work it into our schedule. All right, do we have anything else, Tom? Anything else needs to come up before we adjourn? Now, on the resolutions that you are going to be working on, as soon as you get them prepared, send them in to us, and we will reproduce them and in turn send them all out to the executive board. Some of them, the constitutional amendments, will have to be gotten in time to get them out to the affiliated local unions. What's that time period?
45.
I believe it's 45 days before the convention. The constitutional amendments will have to go out to the local unions at least 45 days before the next convention. The other resolutions don't have to go this route. We can pass them out at the convention, but the constitutional amendments themselves, and I'll have to check this, I think probably the Tolman are the ones gonna have to prepare them anyhow, which means that you'll have plenty of time on yours.
60 days.
Claude, what
60,
time
60
is
Yeah, we
the
changed.
convention, what day?
25th, 6th, and 7th of July.
Come right on my vacation.
Yeah?
Yeah, mine too.
Well, we had an awful problem here this time in scheduling this convention to avoid conflict with international conventions and finding hotel space. This is what the problem was. I'd personally rather have the thing about April and got it over with, you know. Okay, if there's nothing else to come before the meeting, we'll stand adjourned. Good meeting. So you can get your vouchers.
You travelers be careful. Oh, kiddo.